speaker is the son of possibly the future governor of the state of Texas.
Yes.
And I'm real excited about what Huffines is talking about. I went down Interstate 35. He has billboards all the way from San Antonio to Dallas. And he's got some great platforms like no more property taxes. And that sounds exciting to me. So let's give a warm welcome to Kevin.
First off, I want to thank you guys so much for having me. It means a lot to be here with true grassroots conservatives like y'all. And it reminds me a lot of growing up. My father took us a lot to meetings like this. He sat where you're sitting, the grassroots. Unlike a lot of people down in Austin, the country club Republican types that have never been to a state convention, have never been to the county convention, have never been to a precinct convention. And so anyway, it just takes me back. I still am involved with grassroots in Dallas County. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about my father. Kind of growing up, he was always a loving, caring father, very present. He never missed a football game. I shot my first deer sitting in his lap when I was 6 years old. He decided to homeschool us most of our life. He could have sent us to any school he wanted to, but he chose to, have that autonomy and that dominion over education and over our spiritual life. So that's why he and his mother made that conscious decision to homeschool us, and that took a lot of vision. And he's always had that vision, how he wanted to raise his family, and that homeschooling aspect took a big part of that. And so made a lot of sacrifices to do that. So me and my 4 siblings, there's 5 of us, and anyway, so he applied that vision also, being a present father in that family life that he wanted for us, into his business also. So he started. A lot of people, y'all might not know that he's a real estate developer. He's not really in the car business. What he does is I have a common misconception, but what he does is he buys tracts of land and he turns those lands into communities.
Sure.
He cuts those lots and sells those lots to home builders. So he started that business right kind of before I was born. And I remember growing up seeing just 1 employee, then 2 employees, and now seeing the company where it is now. He's built thousands and thousands of lots over the past 30 years. For Texans, especially in the DFW area. I remember one time he applied that vision. It's up in kind of St. Paul, Wiley area, a community called Inspiration. And when we first got out there, maybe 11, 12 years ago, he drove us out there. It's just a field with cactuses, trees, hills, power lines. Really not much there. I'm being a young child, I couldn't see the potential, but he had the vision for that community. And so to get us to sharing that vision, we got on top of his car, so we could see what elevation was going to be at the time. And he kind of pointed, well, that's where the community center is going to be. That's where the entrance is going to be. This is where these roads are going to go. Parks are going over here. The pool's going over there. And we couldn't always see that vision, but he had it. And and then fast forward 12 years, that community is a thriving community. Full of Texans living the Texas dream to this day. It's a great community. So he's always had that vision. He's applied that to his family life and to business. And he's always had it kind of in politics. He's always had a vision of what he thought. Texas should be, this country should be, which is why I was always so involved with grassroots my whole life. Coming to all these meetings, literally just like this one. And we were block walking my whole life for grassroots candidates, knocking on doors, canvassing, poll greeting for candidates. We did that as a young child. He flew us up in 2008 to New Hampshire to block walk for Ron Paul during the presidential election, during that primary. So we've done that my whole life, and so it was no surprise when we wanted to take on John Corona, who was a sitting senator at the time, a Republican, the most liberal Republican legislator in all of Austin. He was a Republican, rhino, of course. And my dad's never really been in politics before, never been an office holder, just a grassroots kind of conservative like y'all. And he took him on in the primary, and that guy never had a real primary challenger in 25 years. And the 2 most powerful things in politics is money and incumbency. And John Corona had those both in spades, but my father had that vision he wanted for Senate District 16, which represents most of Dallas County. And it was a long campaign. He worked his butt off on that campaign. He ended up winning and beating that guy in 2014. And I was in college at the time, and I remember thinking, wow, you're really going to get in politics? I don't know if that's really you, if that's really us. We're just like a homeschool normal family. And you see politicians, they look like robots when they talk to people. And my dad's just a very normal person. And but he did it anyway, and we supported him throughout the whole time, and he won. And he ended up being the most conservative via his voting record, the most conservative state senator in decades in the state, one of them. And anyway, but he left office in 2018 with the veto wave that took over all of Dallas County. And but he's kind of been waiting on the sidelines, waiting for the Lord to call him back into politics and seeing really where that next step should be, if it would be at all. He really likes private life a lot, honestly. Politics is fun and all. But being with his family was good too. So, but he felt called to run against Greg Abbott, and I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when he shut down the state and had all these mass mandates and shredded our Constitution overnight.
Yes, and yes.
And Texas lost. People lost, or 3 million Texans lost their job overnight because of that. And that's more jobs than this state has created in a decade, all because of fear. And like the nurse was saying earlier, that fear is the biggest driving factor in control. So my father wrote an op-ed that was published in dozens and dozens of publications here in Texas. Not this past April, but April 2020. And the virus really hit at the beginning of March 2020. So it took a lot of courage to be way ahead. I'm talking about 8 weeks after, maybe 6 weeks after the shutdown. He posted that op-ed, and it got published all over the state. And that's something that the governor right now doesn't have his courage. Clearly. I still think if it was more popular to be a Democrat, Greg Abbott would be a Democrat this year. And so anyway, so my father was thinking about it, praying hard, wrote that op-ed, and decided to really give this thing a try. And he's running on 3 things, mainly 3 things, and that is border security, eliminating property tax, and election integrity. So if I just want to talk about those 3 things real quick. Election integrity is, we know election integrity. How many people really feel like our elections are secure in Texas?
No, absolutely.
No one in this room, right? My father's not a conspiracy theorist, but he really wants all voters, people like you, even on the left, to come together and shake hands and say, look, this was a fair election. We had audits. And more than ballots and absentee ballots is that he gets worried about, that all Texans get worried about is software manipulation.
Right.
And I serve as an election judge in Dallas County in my precinct, and I can tell you firsthand that there's not a lot of accountability in central count. Tarrant County has their central count also. I doubt anyone's really allowed to go in there on election days. But a lot of Republicans feel disenfranchised, like their votes aren't counting. And if they are, we want to know they are. Okay? And guess who appoints the Secretary of State? The governor. Right? Guess who doesn't do anything about election integrity? The Secretary of State. So why don't we have a new Secretary of State? Well, I don't think the governor actually cares about election integrity. And he'll tell you he does. And he'll pass watered-down bills in a watered-down purple session like we just had for election integrity. But do we feel like our elections are any more secure than they were in 2018 or 2020? No. No, and it's because we have a weak Secretary of State appointed by the governor.
We have a weak governor.
We have a weak governor. The second thing is border security. Our border is completely out of control, and it's been out of control for decades. This is not a new problem. I know the media likes talking about it, especially when Trump got there, but it's been a massive, massive problem. And Greg Abbott's been in office for 30 years. He's been a judge down in Austin for decades. He's been an attorney general, unopposed in the primary. That's not hyperbolic. I'm not exaggerating. He never had a primary opponent in his 12 years, his 3 terms as attorney general. And now he's been governor almost 8 years, and he wants to be governor another 4 years. So I can talk about career politicians. You guys know all about career politicians. They're there to serve themselves in their careers, and they're self-interested. They don't actually care about their constituents and the grassroots that help them get elected. And this really fires me up because you guys are grassroots conservatives, right? The grassroots gets taken to fool so often because we're the ones that do the block walking. We're the ones that do the canvassing, the door knocking, the phone calls. We're the ones that actually put in all the hard work for these candidates. And we get left in the dust constantly by Republicans. My father always said he could trust a Democrat on how they're going to vote, but you can never trust a Republican down there. It's really, really hard. So we're not, we can fight Democrats all we want, but we need to really shift the window and fight a lot of those Republican and name-only Republicans. For decades, and Greg Abbott's been the governor down there, we've controlled the House and the Senate, the AG's office, the LT's office, and the governor's mansion. And we still struggle to get true conservative sessions passed. Why is that? Because of weak Republican leadership. We have supermajorities even. We don't even need them to show up when we have a supermajority. we have quorum constantly if every Republican just shows up. So anyway, about the border though, now that my dad's running, Greg Abbott's saying a bunch of good things that he's going to secure the border. He said, he started saying that when my dad jumped in about 8 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago. The border has never been more out of control than it is now. If he wanted it shut down, he would shut it down. There are about 12 entry points, maybe 20. I don't know the exact number.
25 bridges.
25 bridges over the border, about 1,200 miles in Texas. And TxDOT owns all those. The state of Texas owns all those roads going into those bridges. You could shut down every single border entry tomorrow if we wanted to. And
Mexico would help us.
yeah, they would, because we would apply that economic pressure by shutting down commercial traffic. Mexico needs us a lot more than we need them. And there's a lot of Mexicans like their money. A lot of rich Mexicans. And if we stop down commercial traffic, they might get their stuff together and shut down the border. We had about 200,000 illegals are detained a month on the border from 90 different countries. They're coming from all over the world. It's not just Latin America. And we're one of the few countries that has birthright citizenship. So if you're born here, you're a citizen. All those millions we'll see probably 2 to 3 million illegals come to Texas this year. They're all going to have children, and you know how they vote. This is a premeditated planned attack. If they don't get amnesty, well, all their children have birthright citizenship. They'll vote exactly the way the Democrats want. And we know DC's never going to help. DC, we had Trump in office, great president. We still struggle to close the border because he got pushed back constantly from. And so it needs to be shut down from a Texas governor. And this is a very unique Texas problem. Montana doesn't really deal with this problem. Rhode Island doesn't deal with this problem. Neither does Washington State or Oregon. This is a unique Texas problem, and we need a Texas governor to fix this problem with strong leadership and fearlessness. And my father has that space. The third thing is limiting property tax. And this just isn't a political issue. This really is a moral issue, right? If you own something in this land, you shouldn't pay the government rent on that piece of property.
That's right.
They have first liens. If you stop paying, guess who's going to come take your land?
Yeah, the government owns it.
Well, I thought you owned it, right? No, if you pay rent to the government, they're the ones that decide what they're going to do with it if you don't pay. They decide when the rent's going up, and you can't budget for that. They control all that. So we need to eliminate property tax altogether. And how that's going to happen is, the state of Texas has about anywhere from 8 to 12% revenue growth a year. Property tax, we can buy back down using that growth. So if we limit state spending in all these counties by 1 to 2% a year, we can use that growth to buy back down on that budget that those counties will have. So it takes about a 10-year plan, but in 10 years it'll be completely eliminated.
Where do the schools go?
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Well, I mean,
Down the toilet.
The public schools. They're
already there.
Yeah, that's
They've been there for 20 years.
That's more, I'm not a property owner at the moment, but when I was, I don't have kids, but I was paying property tax. I don't like the idea that I had to pay for schools that don't have kids, but that's not really relevant. But now they're communist indoctrination camps, essentially. I damn sure don't want to pay a dime of my money to that thing.
Right. So a lot of the taxes that go to schools go to Austin and then get redistributed to all the counties. So it's not always, the counties are 100%. The schools in those counties are 100% paid for by the property taxes in those counties. So it's all redistributed for the most part. So that wouldn't change. But my father is a believer in school vouchers, school choice.
Amen.
Public schools are a monopoly run by the government. If you can't afford to move and if you can't afford private school, you have to take that public school, that government school product, and you don't have a choice. And a lot of inner city kids all over Dallas, ISD, or Houston, or all over these inner cities are forced to take that product, and that's exactly what a monopoly is. And we all know competition breeds a higher quality in product and a lower cost, right? And without competition, which public schools do not have at the moment, the product just gets way, way, way more expensive, and the quality gets way, way worse.
That's right.
So we need a lot of education reform in the state to speak into that.
So is he going to put an emphasis on educational reform?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not one of his campaign. It's not like a campaign slogan. There's only so many billboards he can get.
I understand.
That's
it's important, and if he had a background with homeschooling you guys, then he knows the importance of it.
Yeah, he's been endorsed by
if we could just get him to teach the correct stuff and curriculum, then I don't mind the whole public school system.
Yeah.
If we could just reform it.
If we
talk
could
about
just get them.
schools, the universities, I think we all can agree are are super liberal and out of control. You know, more professors identify as Marxist than conservative.
Yeah.
But guess who appoints the school board, the board of regents for these schools, and the president? The governor does.
The governor, he appoints them, right?
He appoints them, and guess who runs those schools into the ground to be Marxist indoctrination?
Dang, that shows he's a communist.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything about that. And we could have true conservative public schools, you know, spotlights for true liberty and freedom as public universities. If we wanted to, we could get professors from Hillsdale into these schools or other schools like that. But the governor won't touch that topic. He won't touch school reform at all. So
Because he's a coward.
because he's a coward, he's a career politician. You know, like I said, he'd be a Democrat if he was more popular. in the
He's a
state.
communist.
The politics aren't leaning that way, so he's not gonna go that way. He's
Well,
to me, he's a wing
accepted
soft.
4 million from.
Which way the political winds
Can
blowing.
I ask a question about the border? So if he has authority, if our current governor has authority to do something with those 12 or however many.
25.
1,100 a day.
25, why hasn't he?
Because
Or
he's-
is the federal government superseded?
No, so the Constitution makes it very clear if a state is being invaded, they have full authority to do whatever they need to do to secure their border.
Section 1, Article 10.
That's right. Section 1, Article 10, they can protect themselves. And by every definition, this is an invasion.
Absolutely.
2 million people that shouldn't be here are being let in. And you all see the videos of they're coming off the buses, they're just being let go. There's no place to put them. I think the reason why he doesn't do anything is because he doesn't know how to do it. I don't think he has the wherewithal to come up with the strategy to do it, and I don't think he has the support of people down there to help him. I don't think he's showing like all these agencies.
I mean, they're coming across the border, changing their clothes and sitting right there for DPS to come pick them up and Uber their butt over to the indoctrination where they're taking them in and then they bust them all over the fucking country.
And
They're taking them over to the military base and flying them all over the place.
There's a bunch of people with COVID now that are coming in.
Yeah, but they don't get
Yeah,
it.
that's all they never cared about COVID to begin with. That's never
No,
been an issue for them.
COVID, yeah.
They're putting them up in nice hotels when we have all these people living on the streets.
They're paying them, they're paying them.
Let me say something. I got an email the other day. I work at a prison. Found out they're fixing to shut down a couple of our state prisons down south so they can start housing these refugees in these prisons instead of shipping them out all over the place.
We just
But what if
I thought those were for the
unvaccinated?
Right?
Well, now that I know my
See, they make friends, Marissa will now. And he loves me. You know, I'm a real estate agent, and what I wanted to say was, is your dad aware that the real estate board sold Texas out and we're no longer a non-disclosure state, and that they have access to our MLS now, and that's why the property tax, well, one of the reasons why the property taxes are going so high is because 20 years ago when I got into the business, if you financed a property, the finance part was public record, which I never quite understood why it's anybody's damn business what we finance in the first place. But the finance part was public record, and they could only raise the taxes based off of what information they had, which was what they financed. Well, about 5, 6, 7 years ago, the real estate board sold us all out and gave them access because attorneys apparently said there was a loophole that Texas can still be a non-disclosure state, but that the cities or the counties can have access to our MLS, which is supposed to just be for real estate agents. And now they know every single dime that you spend on a property, and so they've been basing the taxes off of
market
that,
value.
not off of the financed value. And then when you go to fight it, your other neighbors who haven't been fighting it, they say, oh no, well this is what we're owed because we know what all these people who flipped or whatever did, what they paid for.
Exactly.
So I didn't know if your dad was aware of the dirty pool that was played in the first place, which was why this is now a topic.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's aware of that or not, but hopefully
You'll make it.
if we get rid of property tax altogether, then hopefully that won't be an issue.
It makes it a moot discussion if that happens.
Yeah, well, the key is if.
Yeah,
And if
we-
it doesn't.
We haven't had, and Republicans
We
have
gotta
also
have
been telling us
financial
we're again.
security and not have it public for
Yeah.
everybody to see.
Yeah, we've been
Yeah,
talking
that's
about
why you
property
pay
taxes
those
for
dues
decades.
and all. You're supposed to have a unique.
Going up.
Access.
Right, that's why you
Well,
pay
it
the
wouldn't
matter what
I used to be a realtor.
Right.
To be a chief appraiser.
The way that,
Still the appraisal districts are the problem.
the way that,
Now,
the way that Huffines talks is the fact that, one, you can't tax a right. 2, we have the right to own property. It's a God-given right. It's not given to us by our government. And so therefore, they can't tax our property legally and by our Constitution. So what they're doing in every state, in every city, is they are walking all over the top of your constitutionally guaranteed rights that were given to you by God by taxing a right.
Amen.
And I'll tell you something else, when you get into driving, when you get into traffic, there are so many different laws that they're breaking, and it's criminal what they're doing.
And they expect us, because they threaten us, we comply.
No, I don't.
Oh.
I went to jail. Thank you very much.
I'm fine with that, I'm not complying either, so I feel you.
You mentioned a lot of the violations. My father was one of the lead people down in Austin getting rid of red light cameras.
Yep.
So there's no red light cameras.
I've never paid a red light camera ticket in my life, and I won't.
But as you know, as of recently, they're non-constitutional, and so my father was in the leading charges in that.
Good.
And also one.
Be in the leading charges of stop making us pay for tolls, which
Yes.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't pay those either.
I don't take the toll roads because I don't think they need my license plate.
I don't remember the last.
It's none of your damn business what I
The
drive.
leading endorsement for toll road freedom.
It's not about paying the toll because I don't pay those anyways. I've gotten all these letters in the mail. I just send them back a letter that says, go ahead, fill me, see what happens.
I got a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I love everything you said about your father. We gotta address the Allen West issue too. And I mean, we got two. It seems to me we got two real conservatives. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, you can look at Allen West's voting record, and that speaks for itself. John McCain had a better voting record than Allen West.
Okay, tell me. I'd like to know more about
And,
that.
and I'll look at that.
The one session he served in Florida,
Yeah.
Allen West scored a 70. In that same session, you know what John McCain was?
Yeah.
That same session, John McCain had a 75.
Okay. Well,
So,
look into that. That's
and
what I want to know.
the average Republican in Austin was about a 69 or 70, which is, if that's the average, you know that's the swamp. That's the swamp.
Yeah.
And Allen West was just a couple points above that. You know, and we like Allen West. We think anybody's better than Abbott. I'm not.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Chad Prather always says ABA, anybody but Abbott. So I'm not here to talk about Allen West or Chad Prather. You can look at the voting records. I always say you are what your voting record says you are. And my father had one of the best in a long time.
Yeah, thank you.
Does he have a position on electricity, like we went through that code stuff in January?
I don't know. It's just I don't know what his like policy position is, but I know he is against wind turbines and all that. So.
When we were at CPAC, we had a little machine that was a charger. We had a little sign behind it that said the governor should be able to keep the lights on.
And you did that. So they were paid not to turn on it.
Abby got $1 million.
I think it was $4 million.
The heart, which was the original attack in the first place, that hit us in the first place, with all of that.
He might be. I'm not aware. So I don't know.
Yeah, it was manufactured.
Controlling the weather. Which
Well, obvious too. I've been here.
about.
Yeah.
If you
Look at like
understand
that,
that
try to burn the
it's
snow.
understand it's an attack,
If you do that,
like
you see,
specifically,
right, see how the
and
snow
then
would char.
be aware
Wouldn't
of
melt,
it,
it
so
would
that
char.
you can fight against it, because that's a globalist.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of that. I'll talk to you after.
All right, I can give you an.
Well, that's what they see, that's what they see.
And one more thing I want to touch on regarding the Second Amendment. We've never really had true constitutional carry in this state. And my father's the first state senator in the history of Texas to pass a true constitutional carry bill. Not to pass, but to push
Endorse.
constitutional carry bill in Texas. He authored that bill, and of course it died via Republicans, rhinos, not wanting it. But anyway, so he's a big believer in the Second Amendment. And no one was talking about constitutional carry in the state, but because of that bill that he tried to push super hard, he moved the conservative window over, and now we have a form of constitutional
Watered
carry.
down version.
So what are the limitations to carrying? I don't even know what they are.
There's certain places that you can't carry, but constitutional carry, according to the bill, you can conceal carry, you can open carry, handgun, long gun, shotgun, whatever. You can carry, period. You can carry it outside your clothes, you can close it, you can conceal carry it, but there's certain places like schools, business meetings like at the town center, town hall, that kind of stuff. Texas government buildings, any kind of government building, period, you can't carry in
Really?
unless
Any-
you have the license.
but
If
the
you
way
get the
that-
concealed handgun license, you can.
Yeah,
Usually the places
But
where,
why was it not passed years ago when you can bring out?
Exactly, I don't know. I have no idea why we're not, I
Didn't want
mean,
it passed.
Texas should be the leader when it comes to
Exactly.
constitutional carry.
That's
Anything
right.
Greg Abbott does now, he could have done years and years ago.
But now he's trying to heal the patch from this stupid COVID thing.
Yeah,
He's
now he's trying
aggressive
to kiss
pipe
butt.
down.
Yeah, he had us on mass mandates and lockdowns for 9 months when Ron DeSantis was opening up his state completely.
I have a question for you. Where does your dad stand on the secession from the union and all that? I've heard that it's actually going to Congress
So-
and that it's actually in our house right now.
I think he believes people should have a chance to vote on that. And
Okay.
what would happen with that vote, I'm not sure, but,
What does he feel about it? Do you know what, I mean, I'm not asking you to tell me what he feels, I guess, but where's his stance at?
that's a
Personally.
political question.
yeah, I'm not sure, but I know he's mentioned that, you know, the Texans deserve to vote on it.
Okay.
So, which is very important. A lot of Republicans make sure that Texans never get to, or the legislators never get to vote. Because when they have to vote on something in session, they have to be held accountable to that vote. So they constantly work to get things killed in committees, you know, behind closed doors, so that it never actually, anyone has to vote on it.
I've met a lot of people who say secede.
I've heard a lot of them say succeed. That's why I was asking where he stands on it.
Just based on like DeSantis, I like what DeSantis, a lot of them doing, like when they work together with somebody like that to have, because I do think that these governors need to start kind of connecting and working together
Yeah,
because of what's taking place, because all the other Democratic places are all working together, so why wouldn't the more conservative
Yeah.
states be working together? And also, one thing that I'm noticing is I've been looking up all the Democrats that left Texas that are still in Washington, by the way. I've been looking at, a lot of those people ran unopposed. Like, is there a
Tar and feathers.
effort to try to put people in to run against some of those people, because they're running on nobody's fighting back. You know,
right. You've seen Dallas County a lot when you go to vote.
Exactly.
A lot of the judges that you go for are completely unopposed.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a large grassroots effort statewide to make sure everyone has an opposition, so we know where the voters stand in that. Because a lot of times people think, oh, that's just 100% Democrats. No, probably can't win, but it hasn't been voted on in maybe decades.
Yeah.
But, that seat, whatever that be, their House rep seat or 6 Senate seat or something. So
Right.
yeah, that's a large grassroots effort.
Okay. Just try to get more people fighting against people that aren't even running.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I saw your dad a couple times, and I haven't asked him this question yet, but he mentioned that there's a mental health crisis with the homeless, and I just want him to know, and I hope he passes on to him. If he'd go out and talk to the people that are homeless, a lot of those people are homeless because of family court, and it might be they were drowned in debt because of child support, or they've lost their children. Like I have, whatever, but a lot of us that have lost our children have been traumatized by these courts. So we're also the ones that don't have jobs now. We might have been an assault victim possibly. We can't wear the mask, we're not going to. We're tired of judges telling us what to do. So we're gonna be out there soon, homeless, because our unemployment ran out too, because of Abbott just did that to us. So now we have no unemployment. So I don't want him thinking that everyone that's homeless has a mental issue.
Yeah.
It could be caused by family court, it could be caused by the lockdowns, it could be caused by you're not wearing a mask and your convictions are you're not wearing a mask, you're not taking the jab.
Right. There's lots of roads to homelessness, and I know my father. He might speak in generalities a lot of the time, but nothing's really absolute.
He also talks a lot about the corruption in family courts.
Oh yeah,
That's fully aware of that.
So
Yeah,
that was
big
my
time
second
corruption.
question, real quick. Okay, do you think he's able to run Texas, I hope so, without the help of the Title IV funding? Because when you flip custody on someone, they get Title IV funds from the federal government. If CPS, for example, if they come in, that's a separate entity, they get a minimum of $85,000 per child from the federal government. Has he thought of that, how to run Texas without that money? Because there's so many incentives to destroy the family.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can really speak for my father on those issues. I'm just unclear where he stands on that. But I know he does feel passionate about a lot of reform, adoption agencies, and with CPS.
As far as closing the borders, is he planning on getting funding that can complete what Trump is doing, by putting the entire wall up across?
Yes. So he wants to finish Trump's wall, and that's not over, all 1,200 miles of the border. There's lots of places in mountains that the wall wouldn't go on, or deserts where really no one ever crosses it, they wouldn't go on. But in key miles and stretches from town, border towns, he wants to finish the wall. It would cost a couple $1,000s to put, equating to about $8 to $12 billion. But the Texas budget is just annually is just south of $300 billion.
Wasn't it already paid for? The federal government already paid for it when Trump was in office. Why would he have to pay for more?
Yeah.
It's already down there. All the supplies and everything is already down there.
Yeah, if those funds aren't released, then Texas would have to pay for it. But we would send a bill to the federal government and make sure we do our part to get that money. But so over a span of 3 years, that's almost about $850 billion in the Texas budget. Right? The wall costs $12 billion. That's such a small fraction of the overall budget. We can find ways to do that. And the rainy day fund in Texas has about $12 billion in it already. So if we wanted to do that, we can't send a bill to the federal government to make it big. But he will never ask the federal government for permission to do anything, especially the wall. So I want to make that very clear. Greg Abbott's kind of towing the lines to what the federal government's allowing him to do. I know my father won't even ask for permission.
Good.
You good?
I got here a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
You talked about the revenue for Texas is going up because all the people moving in, and he's going to try to reduce the property taxes. Do you know the percentages on what he plans on doing with that? As it goes up the revenue, he's dropping it down on property taxes, but roughly how much will he be reducing each year to have it down to 0 in 10 years?
Yeah, it would be about 10% a year, I guess. He would be cutting the budget from the counties, kind of capping their budget on what they can do with the money used from property tax, and using that growth, like you mentioned, to buy down on. Hannah, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say on that, so the problems in Texas, a lot of it stems from local debt and the debt that local governments hold. And so I don't know what the average is, but I mean, you think about the city of Bedford and how much debt the local school district has. It's millions and millions and millions in every school district. So the debt service is driving so much of your property taxes. The way to rehabilitate Texas's finances and get rid of property taxes starts a lot like getting your own personal finances in order, which is you got to pay down your debt so less of your monthly income is going into paying for debt. And so once you do that, you're talking about an immense amount of funds that are available while still dropping Texas taxes. So you do that over time, and then you use sales tax, a slight 1 or 2% increase in sales tax to be able to finance government going forward without going back to sales tax.
Right.
Right.
And I also want to make clear that income tax is off the table. Texas has already had a constitutional amendment. We will never have income tax again. And my father has no plans on bringing income tax back.
What about the state sales tax?
Yeah, that might go up 1 to 2%, but no more than that. It's already about 18 quarters, I think. But if it goes up at all, it would be probably capped at 10%. Thanks guys for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Kerry. He's the one that talks about IRS issues and ways to win in court. He's going to be here at 1:30, so if y'all want to take a break, we'll start shortly. Thank you.
Also, real quick, y'all, if y'all haven't signed the forms over here and you want to learn more about the campaign and get plugged in, please put your email, your phone number. You can follow my father on all social media. That's what a lot of his ideas getting put out every hour on social media.